Welcome to Reclaiming Me, a trauma-informed podcast helping women with complex PTSD heal the lasting impact of childhood attachment wounds from parents and caregivers, so you can finally release people-pleasing and perfectionism and learn to trust in relationships, beginning with the one you have with yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, trauma specialist, and a woman who has walked this path both personally and professionally.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the midweek reframe. And if you haven't listened to this week's full-length episode yet, I really encourage you to go back and do that first, because we went deep on something that I think is going to land for a lot of you. And that is this concept of the middle path. And the middle path is something that DBT teaches us about, and DBT stands for dialectical behavior therapy, and why it is so specifically hard for CPTSD survivors to find and stay in that space. But today, I really want to bring it closer. I want to give you one question to sit with and one place to look for it in your actual week. So in the full-length episode, I talked about 3 things that the middle path requires of us. And that is, number 1, being able to hold the both and. Secondly, learning to validate yourself. And then finally, practicing the return over and over. And here's the kicker, without shame. And I really want to zoom in on this last one today, because I think that the return is where most of us get stuck. Here's what I mean. We are going to drift. We all do. And into the pushing through extreme, where we stay so busy that the feeling never quite catches up with us, or on the opposite side of the riverbank, the sinking extreme, where the weight of something gets so heavy that we lose sight of the shore. And when we've noticed that we have drifted, especially those of us with complex trauma, the almost universal response is some version of course I'm here again. I'm always here again. I can't get this right. And I have to say, on a personal note, that this self-criticism, this shame spiral is itself an extreme, and it's one more way that we leave the middle. And I'm sharing this with you today because if I can save you some time and some heartache and some self-criticism with this, then I will consider this a job well done, because I have spent many years thinking that returning over and over to the middle path means that I have failed. But I'm here to share the news that revision is so very crucial here when you're working with complex trauma, because this is the very essence of what we're trying to practice, is the integration, the like, oh, I'm here again. Oh, I'm experiencing myself being really rigid or completely checked out and in denial because I feel so chaotic. And again, these are 2 extremes where most of us have lived for a really long time. And so we have to practice coming back to the middle, probably for the rest of our days. But the good news is that it gets easier to return to the middle. You catch yourself with a lot less criticism and you're like, oh, I'm there again. Time to come back. So I keep coming back to something that Dan Siegel talks about in his River of Integration model. And again, he describes the 2 banks of the river as chaos on one side and rigidity on the other, and the integrated flowing water in between as the place where all of our well-being lives. And the thing that Dan Siegel said that really stayed with me again is the goal is to not ever touch the riverbanks. The goal is to develop enough awareness that you notice when you've run aground and enough skill to push back toward the current. And that's it. That's really the whole practice. Not staying in the middle, because that's impossible. That's perfectionism practice, right? That's being in a perpetual state of lack of self-trust. The whole practice is returning to it. The practice, the actual concrete practice this week that I really invite you to, practice is not to stay in the middle. It's to notice the drift and notice the return without making the drift mean something terrible about you. And dialectical behavior therapy calls this participating without self-consciousness. And I love that. To me, that means just doing the next right thing without running this commentary in your mind 24/7 about how you're doing it wrong. So participating without self-consciousness is the key. And I want to offer you a real life example of what this has looked like in my own life recently. As I shared in the full length episode on Monday, this season of my life has asked a lot of me. And I don't anticipate this changing anytime soon because there's this settling part that has to happen. But this season specifically involves a new state for my husband and myself, a new chapter as being empty nesters and learning to let go of our children as they start this new phase in their life, and stepping away from an in-person private practice and not knowing where I'm going to set up shop in California yet. And I have absolutely been to both extremes. I think if you would ask anybody living in my home with me right now, they would tell you that they have watched me bounce from rigidity to feeling really chaotic with my mood. And there have been days when I have scheduled myself into a place of numbness, knowing that I'm doing that. And then there's days when the grief of transition have sat so heavy in my soul that I couldn't find my footing. And honestly, as I record this right now, I'm sitting in a hotel room, having just walked through day one of my son's college orientation in Colorado. And I can tell you, I'm pretty griefy right now. So what has helped me return? Genuinely consistency in my body and not just in my mind. So things like getting back on the acupuncture table, engaging in gentle movement when my thoughts are racing, really naming a lot of my emotion in a soft way as it is arising inside of me, and being so tender with both the little girl inside of me and then my old crone. So my old lady that has all the wisdom in the world. And I don't do these things because it fixes anything. In fact, nothing can be fixed. My son is going to go to college and his twin brother is going to go to a different college and they're going to live far apart from one another. And my older son is growing into a young man and he's halfway across the world right now as we speak, doing his thing. And my husband and I are kind of forced into this space now of getting reacquainted with one another after our whole marriage has really been revolved around tending and caring for our children. And none of that is to be fixed. So there's just like literally nothing that I can do. But again, this is one of the most reliable practices that I know to let my nervous system just exhale a bit. And to meet myself in the body, in the stillness and in the space between the doing and the being, that's what I'm working on right now. So that's a somatic return. And it matters because CPTSD lives so deeply in the body. The nervous system has its own language that it's speaking, and sometimes the path back to the middle doesn't run through a thought or an insight, but rather a sensation, a breath, and some stillness. So your version of that might be very different. Movement, time outside, a bath, a song that reaches you somewhere that maybe your own words can't. And what matters is that you know what yours is. And that when you notice that you're drifting, you reach for it, not as a reward for getting it right, but as a way of coming home to yourself. So here it is, the one thing I want you to carry. Here's the question. Where have I drifted this week? Towards pushing through or towards sinking? And what is one way that I can return to the middle without shaming myself for having left it? And that's it. Just notice it, name it, and then gently come back. You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to have stayed in the middle all week. You just have to be willing to return. So that's it. That's the midweek reframe this week. I hope it gives you something to hold on to, something gentle, something honest, something that meets you exactly where you are. So go back, listen to the full episode if you haven't yet, and please also submit any questions that you have for me about CPTSD. And you can do this through my Instagram DM at Cindy Payne Rooted, or you can email me and you can get that information in the show notes. And I'll see you back next week. Take really good care.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a little closer to trusting yourself and your inner experience. If this episode resonated with you, please follow or subscribe so future conversations can meet you when they're needed. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, consider sharing this episode with them. That's one of the ways this work reaches the people who need it the most. You can find me on Instagram at Cindy Payne Rooted, and you can also visit me at cindypayne.com, where you'll find all episode links, blog posts, practice updates, and a free people-pleasing style quiz designed to help you notice your patterns with more compassion. And remember, every small step towards healing, self-trust, and presence matters. You are worthy of this journey. Thanks, everyone.